All right, so now it's time for us to set up our project. So I'm just going to maybe minimize this guy a bit, and then this my very interesting main course folder. I would bring it in and create a new folder inside of it. So I'll call that folder pinvent, and let me just say app. So pinvent app, and that's it. Now this folder, I would quickly open this folder with Visual Studio Code, and I'll just click on this open with code here, and it's one of the options we got with this new updates with Visual Studio Code. It can just, we can just open a folder directly. Before I had to use git bash and then I'll say code and dot and stuff, but now things are a lot easier. Anyway, we have that open here. So we have the folder open, and I like to have my code editor and my browser side by side. Okay, so let me just close this guy. Now inside of this empty folder, we're going to have actually two folders, but first we're going to start from the back end. Now this brings us to an important question. When you're building a full stack application, where do you start? Well, the place you need to start is to have an idea of the design you want to implement. Okay, so you should at least have a kind of design in your mind. Then I typically like to start from the back end, because the back end has the logic of the application. The back end and the API endpoints, I build that first. Then I now build the front end, because while I'm building the front end, I would need to interact with the back end. So if I build the front end first, then it means there is no back end for me to interact with. So most likely I'm going to interact with maybe dummy data, and then after I build the back end, I will now have to go back to the front end again to delete the dummy data and connect to the back end. So for me, that looks like double work. Okay, anyway, but that's how I prefer to build mine. And in this course, that's in this project, that's the format we're going to follow. So what I gotta do here is I'm going to create a folder inside of this pinvent app, and I'll call that folder backend. This folder is going to contain everything that concerns our backend. The first thing we'll do though is to initialize this folder. So I would open my terminal in Visual Studio Code, and I will say I actually have something running on my computer. Some videos are processing. I guess that's why this is a bit slow. So maybe I'll just stop it after this one. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll go inside of this backend folder. So the way you do that is, I think I should just expand this guy so that we have some space here. So I'm going to say npm init, and then I'll just give it a -y flag. Now before I do that, I think maybe I should just create a server.js file inside of this guy here, because that's going to be our root file. So inside of this backend, I'll click on the backend to make sure that I'm on it, and then I'll click on this plus icon, and then I'll just say server.js. So I'll hit enter. Aha, so at least we have one file inside here. Then I will now come here and initialize it. So npm init -y, which means that every question that npm asks, I just want to say yes to it, and then I'll hit enter. So what this will do is that it will create a package.json file with which we can now install dependencies and monitor those dependencies in our backend. So that's about it. So let's just give it a couple of seconds. So that's done, but immediately I noticed that I made a mistake. I want to create this package.json inside the backend folder, not outside of it. So I'll just come here and then I'll delete it. All right, so I'll delete that, and then I'll come to my terminal once more. This time I will first navigate to the backend folder. So you know how you do that, you say cd, which stands for change directory, and then you specify the name of the folder, which is backend, and then just hit enter. What that will do is that it will now bring us inside of the backend folder. So you see we now have backend here. Now go ahead and now type npm init -y, and this time the package.json file will be created inside of this backend folder. All right, so let's do that and let's proceed. Okay, so you see now we now have a package.json file and it's inside the backend folder. Great. So now we've been able to create the backend folder. If you open that package.json file, you see here that we have the main file associated with this package.json is server.js. That's why I wanted to create the server.js file first. Okay, great. Now let me close this up, and then right away I'm going to create my front end part of my application. Now that's not what some people like to do, but I just want you to know that everything we are doing is actually together. Or maybe I'll just actually leave that so that we don't have, it's showing up in our GitHub. So first off, we've created the backend folder, and in the next video we're now going to start working on the backend. Like I said, we're going to work on the backend first, and then we're going to transfer everything to the front end and interact with the backend from the front end. So that's about it for this video. In the next one, we're going to continue.